I would recognize the gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me say that the Madam Secretary and Committee, the August 17, 2012 information memo just referenced is not something new.
That's right.
It's not something that this committee uncovered.
That's right.
In fact, Congress has had the information memo for years. It was attached to as an exhibit to the Benghazi ARB report that Secretary Clinton sent to Congress before her testimony to Congress in January of 2013.
Did you personally review our security situation as the previous ARB required?
The ARB had it and considered it important enough to append it to its report, and Congress already questioned the Secretary about her awareness of security conditions in Libya in the run-up to the attacks.
Will the gentleman yield?
We just gave you an extra 3 minutes. I got to use my time. I'm sorry. If I have extra time, I'll give it to you. Within months of the attacks, the Republican investigations of Benghazi had begun, and the chief investigator, Madam Secretary, who was chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Darrell Issa, made it clear that his efforts were directed at you, as he spoke at a political event in New Hampshire. Chairman Issa had said he came to that political event in New Hampshire to, quote, shape the debate for 2016, end of quote. How right he was. At that event, Chairman Issa explained. Can we roll the tape, please?
We need to have an answer of when the Secretary of Defense had assets that he could have begun spinning up, why there was not one order given to turn on one Department of Defense asset. I have my suspicions, which is Secretary Clinton told Leon to stand down. And we all heard about the stand-down order for 2 military personnel. That order is undeniable. They were told not to get off the airplane and cut.
The idea that you would intentionally take steps to prevent assistance to Americans under attack in Benghazi is simply beyond the pale. The claim has also been disproven multiple times over. First, it was disproved by the ARB, which issued its report at the end of 2012. Admiral Mullen, former chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, and had led the ARB's military review, and concluded that the military had, and I quote, done everything possible that we could, end of quote. Then the Republican-led House Armed Services Committee issued its report in February 2014, Madam Secretary, which detailed all of the steps taken by the military to mobilize upon hearing of the attacks, including immediately redirecting a surveillance drone to Benghazi, ordering 2 Marine fast platoons to Rota, Spain to deploy, one bound for Benghazi, the other for Tripoli, ordering the commanders in extremis force training in Croatia to move to a U.S. Naval Air Station in Sigonella, Italy, and dispatching a special operations unit to the region from the United States. About his review, the chairman, Howard Buck McKeon, a Republican, stated, I think,
What are you babbling about?
I've been pretty well satisfied that given where the troops were, how quickly the thing all happened, and how quickly it dissipated, we probably couldn't have done more than we did, end of quote. Chairman Issa's Oversight Committee, which I am the ranking member of, even spent years actively pursuing evidence for this claim and found nothing. And as it says in the Democratic report we put out on Monday, none of the 54 individuals interviewed by our Select Committee has identified any evidence to support this Republican claim against you. In fact, not one of the 9 congressional and independent investigations has identified any evidence to support this assertion in the last 3 years.
My question. I sincerely hope this puts this offensive claim to rest once and for all. I'm asking you, Madam Secretary, did you order Defense Secretary Leon Panetta to stand down on the night of the attacks?
Of course not, Congressman. And I appreciate your going through the highlights of the very comprehensive report that the House Armed Services Committee did on this. I think it's fair to say everybody, certainly Defense Secretary Panetta, Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Dempsey, everybody in the military scrambled to see what they could do. And I was very grateful for that. And as you rightly point out, logistics and distance made it unlikely that they could be anywhere near Benghazi within any kind of reasonable time.
You were able to find $20 million to support increased security forces in Libya, yet we weren't able to find money to support your own people on the ground.
Now, Madam Secretary, the Benghazi attacks occurred during a period of significant upheaval and intense volatility in the Middle East and North Africa. There was tremendous unrest throughout the region. I would like to play a clip that shows what was happening at dozens of posts throughout the world, and then I would like to get your reaction, if you can. Please play the tape.
Protests have spread over an amateur video made in the United States which mocks Islam. In the Afghan capital, Kabul, 1,000 Afghans held a violent protest, burning cars and tires and shooting at police. In the Indonesian capital, Jakarta, hundreds of protesters from hardline Islamic groups threw petrol bombs and rocks outside the American embassy. And in Pakistan, at least one protester was killed. In Beirut, Hassan Nasrallah, head of the Shia Muslim movement Hezbollah, called for a week of demonstrations against the video. Tens of thousands have turned out in a tightly organized, peaceful protest. Well, let's go live on the Hub now to the streets of Beirut.
Secretary Clinton, what was your sense of how things were unfolding?
Congressman, they were very dangerous and very volatile. Starting on Monday with the attack on our embassy in Cairo, going all the way through that week into the next week, there were numerous protests, some of which you have shown us clips of, and they were dangerous. You know, the one that I was particularly concerned about happened in Tunis, and it was the Friday after the attack in Benghazi. We knew from monitoring the media, from reports coming in from our embassies throughout the region, that this was a very hot issue. It was not going away. It was being kept alive. We were particularly worried about what might happen on Friday, because Friday is the day of prayers for Muslims. So we were on very high alert going into Friday. I got a call through our operations department from our ambassador in Tunis, who was in the safe room in the embassy in Tunisia. There were thousands of demonstrators on the outside. They were battering down the barriers and the walls around our embassy. They had already set on fire the American school, which is very close to the embassy. And the ambassador and his team were desperate for help. Their calls to the government of Tunisia, the host government, had gone unanswered. I immediately got on the phone, calling the foreign minister, calling the prime minister, who were the heads of government. I could not find either one of them.
You were able to find $20 million to support increased security forces in Libya, yet we weren't able to find money to support your own people on the ground.
I called the president, President Marzuki. I got him on the phone. I told him he had to rescue our people. He had to disperse the crowds that were there because of the video. He said, I don't control the army. I have nothing I can do. I said, Mr. President, you must be able to do something. I've got all of my people inside the embassy. They are being attacked. If the protesters get through into the embassy, I don't know what will happen. He said, well, you know, I do have a presidential guard. I said, Mr. President, please deploy your presidential guard. At least show that Tunisia will stand with the United States against these protesters over this inflammatory video. To his great credit and to my great relief, That is exactly what he did. He sent the Presidential Guard. Those of you who have traveled know that sometimes they're, men in fancy uniforms, sometimes they're on horses, but he sent them. He sent whatever he could muster to our rescue. And the crowd was dispersed. The damage was extensive, but we thankfully did not have anything other than property damage to the embassy and to the American school. And the government of Tunisia later helped us to repair that. But it was the kind of incredibly tense moment. We had protesters going over the walls of our embassy in Khartoum. We had protests, as you rightly point out, all the way to Indonesia. Thankfully, no Americans were killed, partly because I had been consistent in speaking out about that video from the very first day when we knew it had sparked the attack on our embassy in Cairo. I spoke about it because I wanted it to be clear to every government around the world that we were going to look to them to protect our facilities. And
you were able to find $20 million to support increased security forces in Libya, yet we weren't able to find money to support your own people on the ground.
It was a very tense week, Congressman, one that I think demonstrated how volatile the world is and how important it is for the United States to be on top of what people themselves are reacting to. And that's what I tried to do during that time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Premises that were vulnerable and threatened, of course they came to me. I had to make the decision.